I'm not saying divorced people are unrighteous. I'm not saying that. And Messiah doesn't say that. But what Messiah says is the Father hates divorce. He doesn't want it.
Torah Life Ministries come out of the world. Messiah people seek the truth.
Hello everybody, it's Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries, and I'm so excited about this series called Yeshua Said. And I've been taking the words of our Messiah and nobody else and just letting people hear it right from his mouth, because he gave the instructions, he lived the instructions. That's why he's known as the living Torah, because Torah is known as instructions and guidelines. And Yeshua our Messiah, for those of you that don't know the name Yeshua, you might call him Jesus the Christ, but his name is Yeshua HaMashiach, Yeshua the Messiah. He spoke a word and he wanted people to follow, and in his word he taught people that the original covenant is the foundation of everything I'm saying and telling you to do. And the renewed covenant, you have me to help you do it. But in no way is he saying, well, that's done away with because I'm here now. And that's the mistake many people make. And we're going to look at, this week, we're going to look at, this is the 9th part of the series of Yeshua Said. You can go back and look at the other videos at my website, healthwatchman.com. But this says Matthew 5:31 to 5:32. That's what we're going to be looking at. And the topic today is divorce. Because it says here, we're going to see what he was talking about in this. Actually, let's read the scripture. It says, Yeshua said, this is the scripture, Matthew 5:31 to 32. It says, "You have heard the law that says a man can divorce his wife by merely giving her a written notice of divorce." And for those of you that haven't heard that, it's in Deuteronomy 24:1. It says, "But I say that a man who divorces his wife, unless she has been unfaithful, causes her to commit adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman also commits adultery." Very interesting, the topic of divorce. And it's a very controversial subject of today. Should believers get divorced? And here it says, Yeshua our Messiah himself is saying, and we're going to talk more about divorce in a future episode, because this came up again when the Pharisees came up to Yeshua Messiah and said about divorce, and Yeshua answered them that I allow divorce because of Moses allowed divorce because of the hardness of your heart, but that's not the original intent of our Creator. We'll talk more about that later. But let's look at what Yeshua was saying in this sermon here, or talking here. First thing we have to look at is, this was part of the Sermon on the Mount, and who Messiah was talking to was the people, his followers, the thousands of people that were listening to him when he was on the mountain talking about this. And he was telling his loyal followers that this is important to remember. So he was giving this message to his believers, to his followers. Now, if you're a believer, should you get divorced? It says, unless your spouse is unfaithful, there shouldn't be a divorce. Well, if you're truly a believer, there's no such thing as unfaithfulness. There isn't. You might say, well, he was a Christian and he was unfaithful. Or he was a believer and he was unfaithful. Well, how do you know he was a believer? People say, well, he accepted Yeshua as his Messiah. Well, if you're not following what he told us to do, what does that mean? You have to live out the Torah to be a true believer. You can't just give lip service. That's like saying, well, he was a believer, but he committed murder. That's an oxymoron. It says, but I say a man who divorces his wife, unless she has been unfaithful, cause her to commit adultery. And if you're a believer, you don't want to make that happen. You don't want to cause somebody to commit adultery. So there's not going to be an issue with this. Now, maybe to the unbelievers of the world that don't have Torah on their heart, or maybe to the so-called believers of the world that said a confession with their lips, but they're not living it out, maybe they have an issue of unfaithfulness and all these other issues. Somebody says, well, what about domestic abuse? If my husband beats me, or if my wife, verbally abuses me, isn't that grounds for a divorce? He's talking to believers. He's not talking to the non-believers here. If you are truly a believer in Messiah, that is not going to be an issue. Well, I don't know. I know somebody who was a believer and they beat their wife. He wasn't a believer. Torah wasn't on his heart. But he confessed Yeshua as Messiah. He said Jesus was who he believes in. But he wasn't living it. It's not about what you say, it's what you do. So let's go on and continue what Messiah here said. Now you might say, well, I disagree with you. Well, what if I'm married to a non-believer? Well, it might be another issue. What if I'm married to a non-believer and he's cheating on me or cursing me out, verbally abusing me, or has committed adultery? Well, that's a whole nother story. You have Messiah here talking to his followers, and you have him talking to his believers, the people that believed in him and followed him and believed in his message. And here he's pretty much saying divorce is not an option. That's it. To a believer, married to a believer, divorce is not an option. That's what he's saying. Now, it's a whole nother subject. A believer married a non-believer, is divorce an option? And that could be a discussion another time. I'm not here right now to give you teachings in my opinion. I'm here to give you what Messiah said. And I'm here to explain it. And that is a whole nother issue, everybody, which we'll get to another time. But Yeshua was talking to his believers, his followers, the people that were surrounding him on the Sermon of the Mount. And we look at what it says, what our wonderful Creator says about divorce. In Malachi 3:16, he says, "For I hate divorce. To divorce your wife is to overwhelm her with cruelty. So guard your heart not to be unfaithful to your wife." It's about your heart. It's not about your words. It's not about, I accept Yeshua, so now I'm saved. No, it's about your heart. Guard your heart, so unfaithfulness will not be an issue to the believers. So we have to guard the heart. So we look at this in Deuteronomy 24:1, what it says. In Deuteronomy 24:1, it says, "Suppose a man marries a woman, but she does not please him." Suppose a man marries a woman, but she does not please him. Now, a lot of people today like to take things out of context, and a lot of say, well, she's not making him food that's good enough, or she's not making him happy, she's not, doing everything that he expected of her, so that's reasons for divorce. That's the way the Pharisees wanted to put it. That's with their man-made traditions and their Pharisaical law and everything. That's what they did. That's the issue Yeshua had with them. But that's not what it means. Suppose a man marries a woman, but she does not please him. Well, what does pleasing him truly mean according to Scripture? There's two things that's displeasing, and that was it. There wasn't, she burnt my food, she's always late, she spends too much money. No, none of that wasn't about pleasing him. There were only two things that didn't please a man. One of them was found in Deuteronomy 22:13 and 14. And it says, "Suppose a man marries a woman, but after sleeping with her, he turns against her and publicly accuses her of shameful conduct, and says, 'When I married this woman, I discovered she was not a virgin.'" So the first answer of displeasing a man was, this woman said she was a virgin, I married her and she wasn't. That's a good excuse, a good reason to be displeased. If that's true, our Creator said, well, she's not pleasing him. She's lied to him. Now, if she said, oh, I've been married before, I had an issue, and I had to get a divorce because for whatever reason, and he expected it, he knew it, and there was no problem. But when she told him, I've never been with another man, and he discovers that she has been, that's one of the things of displeasing him. And the other one is in Numbers 5:14, where it says, if a husband becomes jealous and suspicious of his wife, and needs to know whether or not she had defiled herself by sleeping with another man. So, if he becomes jealous because he suspects she might be sleeping around with another man, and it doesn't directly say sleeping with another man, but defiles herself, that's how she's going to defile herself, sleeping with another man. So he becomes jealous, so it's displeasing. And the only way he's going to be displeased is if she's given him a reason to think that way. If she's going around there, hanging out with other guys, talking to other guys on the phone, she's giving him a reason to think that way, and he becomes jealous. Now, there are ways to handle this, which we're going to discuss. And the first way is, we'll continue on the first one. A man discovers a woman, said she was a virgin, and she never slept with another man, but he found that he is. There were two ways something like this was handled. And the first way was, and we continue in Deuteronomy 24:1, having discovered something wrong with her, he writes a letter of divorce and hands it to her and sends her away from his house. Now that was the righteous way. That was the righteous way to say, look, you've done something bad to me, you've displeased me, you've lied to me, but I'm going to do the righteous thing and let you go free. So I'm just going to let you go free. I'm not going to make a big issue out of this. I'm just going to hand you this divorce and you're out of here. But we look at in 24:2 what she's allowed to do if that happens. It says in Deuteronomy 24:2, when she leaves his house, she is free to marry another man, but if the second husband turns against her and divorces her, or if he dies, the first husband may not marry her again. That will be detestable to our wonderful Creator. So that's the option there. The man has not made it publicly known that the woman has committed this act, and he lets her go. He gives her a divorce, but he is not, by according to Torah, allowed to marry that woman again. So if a man is married to a woman, he finds an issue, he divorces her under any circumstance, she is not allowed to come back later on in his life. He's not allowed to marry again. It doesn't say the man's never allowed to marry again. It doesn't say the woman's never allowed to marry again. It just says those two people are never allowed to marry again. And you might ask, well, why? Well, our Creator wants to make it so that divorce is not even an option. Not even an option. It's not like, well, it didn't work out, let's see what happens later. No. He wants to keep the marriage together under all circumstances. And even in a case like this, the man had an option to just forgive the woman. And if he did so, great, but he doesn't have an option to forgive her later. So he really has to think about this before he sets her free. But the other way is, if the man makes a public case out of this, and he tells everybody that this woman wasn't a virgin. And we see this example here in Deuteronomy 22:15 and 18. An investigation begins. It says, the woman's father and mother must bring proof of her virginity to the elders, and they held a court at the town gate. Her father must say to them, I gave my daughter to this man, and he has turned against her. He has accused her of shameful conduct, saying, I discovered your daughter was not a virgin, but here is the proof of my daughter's virginity, and they must spread the bedsheet before the elders. Now, if the man is wrong in his accusation of the girl being a virgin, Deuteronomy 22:19 says, the elders must then take the man and punish him. They must also fine him 100 pieces of silver, which he must pay to the woman's father, because he publicly accused her of virgin Israel's shameful conduct. This woman will then remain the man's wife, and he is never to divorce her. So the man isn't going to publicly announce that this woman did something wrong if he really didn't feel she did. And, it says the man is going to be held accountable if he was wrong. It says in Deuteronomy 22:19, the elders must take the man and punish him if he's wrong. They must fine him 100 pieces of silver, which he must pay to the woman's father because he publicly accused her of not being a virgin of Israel. And this is shameful conduct. And then the woman should remain his wife, and he may never divorce her under any circumstance. He must never divorce her. So the man, is going to make this accusation if he believes it to be true, because he believes it to be true. And then he has to either, I say do the righteous thing because if the woman is found guilty, it's not pretty. So I say the righteous thing to spare the woman's life. He won't say anything. He sets her free. She could marry somebody else. But if he does bring a public case to this, it's not unrighteous. But if he does, he better be sure he's right. Because if he's wrong, there's consequences he has to pay. But it goes on to punishment if the woman is found guilty. So this will make sure a woman's not going to lie about this issue. Deuteronomy 22:20-21 says, but the supposed man accusations are true. He can show that she was not a virgin. The woman must be taken to the door of her father's house, and there the men of the town will stone her to death, for she has committed a disgrace of a crime against Israel by promiscuous living in her parents' home. In this way you will purge evil from among you. Again, the whole idea of the scriptures is to keep the community pure. The man is not going to make an accusation of this if he didn't feel it to be true, and because there are consequences he had to pay. But the woman is definitely not going to go around saying she's a virgin if she's truly not, because if she gets caught, the consequence is death. Keeping the community holy is the reason. It wasn't about a righteous, wonderful Creator just destroying and killing people. No. It was about keeping the community holy and purging the evil from among the community. Now, those that lie, those that deceive, that's what he considers evil. Again, true believers aren't going to have this issue. They're not deceiving. They're not committing, adultery. They're not going to be this issue. So divorce shouldn't be an issue. But if somebody says, oh, well, I'm a believer, but I told my future husband I'm a virgin and I'm really not, well, that's a lie. A believer who has our Creator's words on their heart, they're not going to lie, especially lie like that. It says in Numbers 5:21 to 24, if the woman was found guilty, she will not have any more children. It says her private parts will shrivel and her abdomen will swell and she won't have any more children. But the real thing is she's going to be put to death, so what does that matter? But it says if she wasn't found guilty, she will be able to have children, which is a true blessing. Now, when it said if the man was wrong, he would be punished and then he had to pay this fine, we didn't know if the punishment was a fine or if there was further punishment from that. But that's what it said. The man just was punished, but then it going on to say if the woman, she was put to death. Let's go in and look at the punishment if the woman was found guilty of actually adultery. And just because, lying and adultery are two different things. So if she was found guilty of lying, that was something different. But she was still to be put to death because she deceived the man. But if the woman was found guilty of adultery, then she was to be put to death. Now, some people might say, well, it seems like there's too much of a penalty for the woman, but not enough penalty for the man. Well, it also talks about a man being guilty of adultery, and this is a serious one. And this talk today isn't about adultery. It's about divorce, and that's what Messiah was talking to them about. But if a man was found guilty of adultery, his relationship with our wonderful Creator was cut off. Cut off. It says in Malachi 2:14, you cry out, why doesn't our wonderful Creator accept my worship? I tell you why, because our Creator has witnessed the vows you and your wife made when you were young, but you have been unfaithful to her, though she remained faithful to you. So one thing is, his relationship is cut off with our wonderful Creator. So right there, that's a tough one right there. But then in Deuteronomy 22:22 it says, if a man is discovered committing adultery, both he and the woman must die. In this way you will purge Israel of such evil. So it's not only the woman that's going to be put to death, but it's also the man. So both of them. Basically, anyone who's righteous that has committed adultery, forget about divorce being allowed. It said they're to be put to death. This is what Messiah was saying. It says, only in the case of adultery should people get divorced. Because, you get divorced so you could set free the spouse that didn't commit divorce, and the person that did commit adultery, they're gone. They're put to death. They're put to death, the man and the woman. So if you have a man and woman that are married, and one of them commits adultery, whoever that person committed adultery with, they perish. They're put to death. Now you have a widow or the man who's... would a man be a widow? I don't know about that. What do you call a man whose wife died? A widow? I'm not sure what you call that. See, I don't know everything. But anyway, you have the righteous person who's allowed to remarry. They're allowed to remarry because of the unfaithfulness. And it says, as Messiah said, and we started off, only in unfaithfulness can this happen. So let's go back to the beginning and read what Messiah said now on the Sermon of the Mount. In this part of Yeshua said, and we'll kind of get an idea and wrap up everything we were saying. In Matthew 5:31 to 32, this is part 9 of my series, Yeshua said. You can go back to my website, healthwatchman.com, and see the rest of that. It says, you have heard the law that says a man can divorce his wife by merely giving her a written notice of divorce. Okay, so a man can divorce his wife by giving her a written notice. Well, that's what it says. That's what the Torah says. That's what it says. But I say, so Yeshua is saying, that's what it says, but now I'm explaining it. But now I'm making that more clear. But I say a man who divorces his wife, unless she was unfaithful, and if she was unfaithful, her private parts are shriveled up, she can't have babies, and she's going to be stoned. But unless she was unfaithful, or even if the man's unfaithful, he's put to death as well. Unless she has been unfaithful, if he tries to divorce her, cause her to commit adultery, and anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. You ask, what about the jealousy issue? If she's found guilty, well, he doesn't have to make a public issue out of that where she's stoned. He could set her free, and she can go and marry somebody else. She just can't marry him again. So in other words, what I'm getting out of what it says here is Messiah is saying, look, it's a different story for unrighteous people, but if you call yourself a believer in Messiah, if you want to follow the guidelines and instructions of our Creator, which I'm telling you to do, divorce should not be an option. It shouldn't be an option. We have a big problem today. We have more people divorced, or just as many people divorced in the church than out of the church. More so-called believers are divorced than out of the church. Well, you have to take things seriously. When you make that confession of accepting Yeshua as your Messiah, you're making a covenant and saying, I am going to follow the words and the guidelines and the instructions that are found in the scriptures, and I am going to do my best to do that. But if you make that vow and you don't do that, you are being unfaithful to our wonderful Creator. So you have, and there are consequences. It says in the scriptures, that they will suffer the consequences if they don't keep my word. There will be serious consequences. If you've made a vow and you said you're going to keep it and you don't, there are still consequences if you haven't made that vow. But you better make sure when you accept Yeshua as your Messiah that you're ready to change. I'm not saying it'll happen overnight and you'll be able to, because you might struggle with the things of the past, but you have to hate the things of the past and love the things that He loves, because you've made that vow. So in other words, we need to think about this thing. I see a lot of people through excitement, they make a vow, they accept Messiah, but they don't think about it. And then when that excitement wears off, they go back to their old life. No. When I tell people to accept Yeshua as Messiah, I don't just want you to say, well, you're running around committing adultery, you're running around stealing, you're running around beating people up. Well, just confess Yeshua with your mouth and watch how your life's going to change. No, I want to give you His word. I want to give you instruction and say, look, if you accept Yeshua as your mouth, this is how your life can change. And this is what you can get. And you will no longer suffer these certain consequences. But this is what it will mean. This is what you will have to do. And right now, currently, in your fleshly desire, it might not sound too good to you. If you're running around sleeping with women and you think it's okay, and you see it says not to do that in the Word, it might not sound good to you right now. But when you accept Yeshua as your Messiah, and if you truly mean it, if you truly want to do this and you truly mean it, your heart's going to change. And you're going to love what He loves, what His Word says, and you're going to hate everything else that you're doing now. But if you're not ready to change, if you don't want to change, if you have no desire to change, don't say these words. Don't accept Yeshua as your Messiah, because you've made a vow and you're not going to keep it. People think as soon as I say these words, I'm going to change. No. We have to teach people what the word means and let them make that decision if they want to change or not. We say some people aren't ready. Well, they have to know the information before they could make that decision. It's not once we say a couple of words, our heart automatically changed. No. We have to understand what those words actually mean. Well, marriage is no difference. People might be in the romance stage of a relationship and want to get married to somebody. But if they don't understand the consequences of the vow they're making, for better or for worse, that I am accepting this person as my spouse, and I will be there regardless of what happens, and I will not leave. That is a vow. Well, I believe if people had the knowledge of what marriage was all about, and they did counsel before they got married, and they understood the decision they were about to make, when something came up in the future, they wouldn't run to get a divorce. But just like people confess Yeshua as Messiah today before knowing what that means, I think people get married before understanding what that means. And this is why so many people that call themselves believers truly aren't, and so many people that make that vow and get married end up in divorce. Folks, we need to take the words of Messiah seriously. And Messiah told us and showed us how to live. And He showed us the importance of a vow. It says in Jeremiah, cursed be the man that obeys not the words of this agreement, of this covenant. Well, cursed be the man that makes a covenant to be married, and cursed be the woman too that makes a covenant to be married and commits adultery or doesn't take this covenant seriously. We have an option, and I am so blessed and so excited about this. Now, let me clarify something, folks. Divorce and separation are two different things. If somebody's getting, if there's abuse going on in a family or in a relationship physical or emotional or verbal abuse or drug use or something like this. Maybe somebody truly has given their heart to a wonderful Creator, but they're addicted to alcohol or drugs or something else. Being separated during that time, why our Creator works on that person's heart, and if your heart is sincere, He will help you overcome that addiction. If your heart is sincere, He will teach you of the wonderful thing of forgiveness. He will teach it to you. If your heart is in the right place, if you've got caught up in things you shouldn't be caught up with, if you've seen your parents, if you've seen abuse when you were growing up as a kid and it's following the family, He can teach you how to break that. There's a difference between separation and divorce. I do not believe the scriptures are against separation in certain cases until people are working these things out. And if somebody's heart truly isn't in the right place and they don't want to work these things out, again, that's an issue that we could discuss another time. But if somebody sincerely has made a vow and they want to be in a relationship and they want to keep that vow, it's okay to be separated during certain times, to work these things out. But we have to have our heart in the right place and let Him direct our paths. And as He directs our paths, I don't believe divorce is going to be one of those, and shouldn't be one of those. So this isn't anything. If somebody's going through a situation where they've gotten divorced because their spouse was unfaithful, it's okay according to Scripture. But remember, our Creator hates divorce. He doesn't hate you for getting divorced. It's totally a righteous thing if you're married to somebody that commits adultery and you just feel, I can't be in a relationship with this person, I need to get a divorce, and to find somebody else who's going to be truly a follower and believer. But if that person that committed that adultery or something, they didn't really, they don't have an issue. There's so many issues around this that we'll talk about at other times. But if they're willing to make it work and try to make it work, you need to pray to the Father to put it on your heart for forgiveness. And forgiveness is a tremendous thing. And see how it works. I'm not saying divorced people are unrighteous. I'm not saying that. And Messiah doesn't say that. But what Messiah says is the Father hates divorce. He doesn't want it. So we need to take our vows seriously. And if we're living every day in the Word, we hear about relationships losing that great romance stage as it goes on. No, if we're living in the Word and pleasing Him, and that's the goal of both people in a relationship, man, I can't tell you how exciting it is to wake up every day knowing that my spouse, wants to please Him as much as I do. And we might have different approaches about how to do that, but, it's crazy. People get divorced today because, they go looking for a house and one person likes the house and the other one doesn't, and they can't figure out what house they want, so they get divorced. It's just too easy today. Our Creator hates divorce. Yeshua said that, and He shows that. So everybody, we'll get back with more information. If you have any comments or questions about this series, Yeshua said, or anything else, post them below the video. And it's exciting. I'm excited about this, and I pray you are too. So Yeshua said, go to healthwatchman.com and check it out. Until then, everybody, have a great day, and shalom, shalom. And let me just say this. If you're in a situation right now where you are contemplating divorce or you're having issues in your relationship, I highly, highly, highly recommend a book called The Garden of Peace by Rabbi Shalom Arush. That's for men. The Garden of Peace by Rabbi Shalom Arush. And that's on my website, rawlife.com. And for women, the same Rabbi Shalom Arush, wrote a book called Woman's Wisdom. And I think these are excellent books to help people that are going through situations. And even if you're not, I think it's an excellent book for everyone to keep that marriage in a wonderful place. Garden of Peace and Women's Wisdom by Rabbi Shalom Arush. Go to my website, rawlife.com, and you can purchase those. I promise you, it will bless your relationship. All right, everybody, there you have it. This is Paul Neeson with the Yeshua Said series. You could look at previous episodes on healthwatchman.com. Just click under the Bible videos and look under the category Yeshua Said. Until then, have a great day, and I will pray that more people see these videos because they need to know what Yeshua said. Until then, everybody, shalom, shalom.